the Creative Chats podcast with Mike Brennan. Welcome to another episode of Creative Chats. It's the podcast for artist makers and content creators where we talk about creativity, the creative process, and story. I'm your host, Mike Brennan. I'd love to invite you to stop by dailycreativehabit.com. I have created all sorts of resources for you because I truly believe that when you create, we all win. So I want to see as many of you stepping into your creativity fully, closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I want to help you do that. So I've created resources like the Daily Creative Habit Journal. I've written a book, Make Fun a Habit. I have all sorts of free resources like this podcast and a Facebook group called Daily Creative Habit. Also, the paid membership for Daily Creative Habit, where we get together with like-minded creators, all pushing in the same direction, encouraging each other, and saying we're going to show up every single day to create something to get our work out there into the world. So if you would like to be a part of any of those things, again, stop by dailycreativehabit.com or simply visit my website, which is mikebrennan.me. Hey friends, today I'm going to have a little bit of a fireside chat, if you will. There's something that's been on my mind, and I've been encountering it in life online and offline, and just some thoughts I want to share around this. Perhaps you've seen this too. I think we have a problem, and it's a beneath me problem. What do I mean by that? Well, I think that there's a lot of people saying, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's beneath me. And passing up opportunities because it doesn't look like the quote right type of opportunity, or it's not big enough. It's not what they hoped it would look like. It doesn't come packaged the way that they would desire it to. I mean, there's a myriad of reasons. But I think this common mindset is so prevalent today that it's worth talking about and examining, and maybe doing a little gut check today, honestly, and saying, where has this mindset crept into my own life, and what has it been blocking me from? Now, I just want to say also, there of course are times when you're going to not take advantage of every opportunity. And we're going to talk a little bit about knowing your value and your worth. That is certainly part of this conversation too. So there's not like a blanket statement I'm trying to throw over this, but what I am trying to do is expose where I think our culture today really wants us to lean into this idea of value and worth, so much so, swinging the pendulum to the other side, where we are not willing to take advantage of certain opportunities that are right before us because they, quote, are beneath me. And everyone today wants to be seen as an expert immediately. Like there's no more training. There's no more, hey, I'm an intern. There's no more, I'm learning this skill set. I'm acquiring the things I need to acquire. And I think a lot of that has to do with social media, honestly, and not to cast blame just solely on social media. But I think there's something it taps into that's a little bit ugly within us as human beings. And this idea of, wanting to inflate our self-importance, wanting to be seen as this expert immediately, and not being willing to be seen as a beginner. And there's certainly this balance. This is the challenge. Balancing the message of knowing our worth and actually leaning into making sure that opportunities are aligned with that, but then also putting in the work necessary and starting in the beginning, starting from the starting line. When I was coming up through art school, we were getting ready to graduate and we were putting our portfolios together, and we were excited about entering the workforce. And I remember working hard, putting all these things together, and then going out on these interviews as a newly college graduate. There was no hiding the fact that I had just graduated art school. I had a portfolio. I had stars in my eyes, right? I had a little bit more excitement and got around some of the industry professionals who maybe were a little bit more jaded by that point. Um, but the point is, I could never pretend that I had years and years of experience, that I had worked with, global brands and had done all this amazing work when I really hadn't. And much of my portfolio, much of my body of work was projects I gave myself, projects from school that weren't, quote, real, right? There were certainly real world type of projects that professors would give us because they were working professionals as well. But those just mimicked something that was the type of project or the type of company, or we picked something that we seemed to resonate with and were to create something as if we were hired. But in reality, we were students, we were beginners, and we were entering the workforce looking for opportunity, looking to get hired to become part of something and to lend our creative abilities and skills, understanding that we were starting fresh. And that was more than okay. And it was appropriate. Everyone knew it. There was no hiding this. And I think there's something that happens, especially as we get older, this thought that, well, that's okay for that period in my life. I'm younger. Of course, I don't know as much. Of course, maybe I'm more naive. Of course, there's things I need to learn and networks to build and skills to gain, experience, etc. So it's appropriate for that point in my life. But what about when you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s and you're starting over? That's a much harder pill to swallow. This pendulum swing of know your worth culture that's in our faces so much. I think it's important that, yes, we know our worth, that we value ourselves, that we don't give away everything for free, and that we understand value because we don't want to be taken advantage of. But I think what happens so often is that people get so scared about getting taken advantage of that walls go up, that protection mechanisms go into place. And that's when there's a lot of posturing and this desire to be seen as the expert immediately. Now, there's temptation to skip steps, avoid paying dues, and overestimate experience when it comes to new areas. Because we don't like to be the beginner. We don't like something that feels small. We don't want to be small. We want to be big. And we don't want to do small work. We want to know that our work has impact. We want to know that the value that we feel, we believe, we can actually bring it through what we do. And in our minds, we've told ourselves there's nothing about that is small. So we resist small. Now, I've talked about that in terms of establishing a daily creative practice or habit. But I think the same goes true here, is that we underestimate small. I mean, there is a lot of resistance that happens when it comes to thinking this way. We fear being seen as a beginner because we think no one's going to take me seriously. No one's going to take my work seriously. I'm going to be sidelined and looked over and passed over for things because people won't think that I'm, quote, somebody. And that really gets to the core of so much of the struggle here. And then we have this illusion that certain types of work are not worth our time. We start to divide things into categories and even people into categories. Who I want to work with, who I don't want to work with. And again, don't hear me saying this in regards to if you have goals, if there are certain companies or certain things that you want to do, certain projects you want to work on, people you want to work with, that's amazing. That's awesome. Be specific. Have those goals. But what I'm saying is when you're just starting out, or if you're restarting in a completely different category or industry, you can't expect there to be this transfer of where you've been, things you have learned, to immediately be ushered into this new endeavor or this new industry. We end up squandering a lot of opportunities to learn and to grow and to serve others because we think things are too small and we're too big. See, there's an importance about building something from the ground up. You know, we all know that no one has become an expert overnight. I mean, we think that there are people that just because they're new to us, that they've become overnight sensations. They're the success stories. And sure, every once in a while, there's lightning in a bottle and someone is, quote, discovered and ushered to the front of the line. But most of the time, talk to people, find out about their stories, their journeys. That's one of the reasons why I love to do this podcast, love to have these conversations with people, tracing their journeys, tracing their stories, and seeing where did you come from and how did you get to where you are today? What happened in between there? And inevitably, they'll share a story where it's windy, where it is not just a straight line up and to the right of continued success after success, but there's stories of catalyst moments, sometimes painful ones. There's stories of missteps and stories of strategic relationships that came into view at just the right time. There were stories of people who came alongside of others to help them and shape them. People who held doors open for other people for opportunities. No one, quote, gets there on their own. We all start as beginners, and we all have to learn and grow and build credibility from the actual work that we do, not just titles or posturing or social media posts or photos that we post on Instagram of us in influential places with influential people. I mean, we've all heard the stories of the, quote, influencers who are posing with really expensive cars or in mansions or places that are really exotic locations. And the truth behind that is they don't own any of those things. They're not really there in the context at which they're leading you to believe, or maybe they're leaving information out and you're filling in the gap because something about those things says, if you are around those type of things, you are important. We also have to change the channel on how we think about, quote, paying dues. Because nobody likes that. Even the term itself, paying dues. Like, I don't want to pay. It's going to cost me. And we think about it in terms of like suffering instead of about gaining skills or knowledge and connections, networks. Paying dues really just means I'm doing the work. I'm doing the necessary work that it takes for me to build something, because there aren't any shortcuts. And when we try to take shortcuts, that's when things fall apart. How many times have you perhaps went to work with somebody, or you know of somebody that was posturing a certain way and touting all this experience, and then you go to work with them and find out a very different story and experience because they've been pretending, because they've been posturing, because they've been kind of inflating things to make it sound like they're, quote, more important than they really are in a certain industry or field or with a skill set. And yet the truth always comes out. And it's very disheartening because we could be spending a lot of time, energy, effort, money on things that we think are real. But then when we get closer, we find out it's just a mirage. And then we're tempted to do this very same thing when it comes to our work and our industry. We've all been the recipients of that. I think we need to remember those times and how it made us feel. There's no shortcuts. We can't skip ahead. We need to just show up and do the work. Let's talk a little bit about some actionable steps to help break this beneath me mindset. The first thing I want to say is I think we need to say yes more, especially in the early days and early stages. Be open to all kinds of opportunities. Don't say no. Say yes to as many things as possible. And I understand there is going to be a gap. There's going to be a gap in what it is that you want this thing to look like and what it really looks like. I've seen this very often, especially when it comes to speaking. Now, I started to pivot more into speaking several years ago. And I'll be honest, I was hearing stories of people making a certain amount of money, and there are certain people teaching certain methodologies about how to make a certain amount of money speaking publicly. And I am going to say that there is no one size fits all. So just leaving that there. But there are a lot of opportunities where people want you to speak for free. And if your goal is solely, I want to speak and here's my fee, I don't speak for free, well, then you're just starting out. You don't have the credibility. You don't have the experience. You're not a known entity. You probably don't have any recorded talks to put into a highlight reel or a speaker reel. You probably don't have much to share with somebody. Like, why would somebody invest in you? Put yourself in their position. Why would somebody pay you to do something that you haven't proven that you're able to do? There's no track record. There's no proof of concept. There's nothing here that shows that you are capable and you can command this. So in the early days and early stages, say yes more. And this is extremely humbling if you're somebody who has pivoted into a new industry or a new position, a new creative endeavor, and you're starting over. Because there is this thing in you. And believe me, I'm speaking from experience, because coming from graphic design and art director's world and, editorial design, and then pivoting into some other things later on in life where it's speaking and being a personal brand, learning how to be an entrepreneur, all of these things I've had to learn as I've gone. I've had to surround myself with people and take chances and say yes to some things and make a lot of mistakes. And that's something else that I want to just pause for a moment and say. It's more than okay to make mistakes. Matter of fact, it's going to happen. And I think we need to be more honest and open about the mistakes, the missteps, the failures that happen. Brad Montague just came out with this book, Failabrations. I love this. I got to meet Brad recently at an event here at Nashville, and I've been following Brad for a while online, and it was just finally great to make the personal connection with him and his wife. And this book, Failabrations, is more than a book. It's really it's a call to celebrate failures. It's saying it's not just okay, it's actually valuable to fail. It's actually valuable to make mistakes, because that's how we learn. And it happens to everybody. No matter how much somebody tries to posture or hide or position, they are still experiencing failures at some point in their life. They've experienced it in some things they've tried to launch. They've experienced it in some ideas that went sideways. They've experienced it in some business deals that didn't turn out the way that they thought that it would. They've experienced it in a myriad of ways. And yet we shy away from talking about it because it somehow makes us feel small and inferior. And I want to say, I think we need more people leading the charge, not bleeding all over everybody saying, hey, here are my failures, in such a way that maybe they're fresh. Not everybody needs to know all the nitty gritty details of everything that happens, but certainly show a more true and authentic picture of what is happening. I have launched and failed many times at things. I get some ideas and then I get to work. And sometimes in the past, I have not taken the time to validate it with others to make sure that what it is that I'm creating, people actually want, people actually need. And so I've set myself up for failure because I get excited about something, I'd build something, I'd spend time, energy, money, resources in something, put it out there, and then it flops. That's a very painful lesson to learn, but there is a lesson to learn in there. Now, getting back to saying yes more. Sometimes growth comes from unexpected places and relationships. And if you're not open, if you close off your posture and your attitude by saying, this stuff is beneath me, you will shortchange yourself from lessons that you need to learn, especially earlier on, and perhaps relationships and learning skill sets and building things that get tested. You'll close yourself off to those things because you're saying something that's, quote, beneath you. Say yes more. Say yes often, because you just don't know where something small will become something big. You don't know when working with somebody who seems like, I don't know, their company kind of seems beneath me, or what they're doing seems beneath me. If you were to take a posture of openness and saying yes, and actually serving that person in that company, you could find that maybe, just maybe, they move on to another opportunity, or that company blows up to be really huge, or there's a strategic relationship that's made there. And because you have taken the time to build early on, that might open a door that's much bigger later. So say yes more. Figure out where you can say yes to the opportunities that are before you right now. Let me give you another example that's timely for me. So I've just moved here to Nashville. I've talked about this, and coming from New York, New Jersey, especially with the art scene, it's very different here. I mean, I'm still exploring it. I'm still trying to understand it. I've talked to many artists who are local, and generally the sense is it's pretty small here. And there was something pre-COVID, and then that kind of got shut down, and things maybe seem to be trying to bubble up to the surface again right now. And the opportunities that seem to be here, from what I'm discovering, look very different than the opportunities that presented themselves in New York. And in some ways, that's a good thing. In some ways, it maybe is not such a good thing. But I'm assessing things. I'm trying to figure some things out, and I'm trying to figure out where to say yes. And I have felt this beneath me thing rise up even in me being here, because I'm thinking to myself, man, this is where some artists are hanging out, or this is what opportunities happening locally here. I don't know. I feel like I've done that before. I feel like it's not worth my time or investment because there's not as much traffic as there would be if I were in New York, or it doesn't look as flashy as it would when I was in New York. And I can do myself a huge disservice right now if I don't plug into this community and figure out how to serve, figure out how to befriend and become part of the visual arts community here in Nashville. If I put my nose in the air and say, well, this doesn't look like what I think it should look like, this doesn't look like what I once experienced, this doesn't look like fill in the blank, then I will be missing out. And I'll also probably look like a jerk and come off like a jerk. And so instead, I want to see, how can I say yes and temper my expectations and adjust my expectations in some things, because I'm new. I just moved here. I don't have a track record with people here. People don't know who I am. People don't know my work, and I don't know them or their work. I don't know people in the community here. And so it would be foolish of me to think I can just transfer what happened to me all the years I was living in New York and New Jersey, all those experiences, all those relationships, all the things that happened, and transfer that here and look through the same lenses, because I just can't. I'm starting over. So 1, say yes more. Number 2, show your work and don't rely on perceptions. Like, don't try to lead with a reputation that you don't have yet. Lead with work that you've actually done, with things you've actually built, not with a reputation you want to have. We all want to be the person that's the go-to person for fill in the blank. We all want people knocking on our door and hunting us down and coming after us for opportunities that are amazing, partnering with global brands maybe, or with a certain person in an industry. We would love to see invitations pour in and people to seek us out, that we would be in demand. And maybe that will happen. Maybe that is happening at a certain front. And if it is, awesome, great, celebrate that. But lead with what you've actually built and done. Don't lead on a reputation you want to have that you don't have yet. Like, prove your reputation by the work that you do. Be consistent. Be working every single day. Don't treat it like a hobby. Don't have hobby habits when it comes to your work, because you will get hobby results. And I think there's something about getting in there, pouring into the creation process, that gives you the ability to showcase your skills also. Even skills that you're still acquiring and learning and growing. You can share behind the scenes and talk about, hey, this project required something of me that I didn't have in my toolbox. And it's given me the opportunity to learn something new and to become more proficient at something. Show the work. Show that you're teachable. Show that you're hungry. Show that you're willing to participate and you're willing to collaborate. And you're not simply just trying to put yourself in a creative ivory tower, waiting for people to come find you with the opportunities that only you want. Here's my challenge. Start a project right now, like this week, today. Start something. Come up with an idea. Start the project. Create something very tangible, even if it's small. And understand that, again, small does not mean not valuable. It can be tremendously valuable. But create something in this project and think about it in these terms of, how can I show my work and not rely on a perception or a reputation that I don't have yet with this project? Let it be the thing that you use as the spotlight, as your tool to show up and do the work and talk about it. Number 3, serve others along the way. Man, this one is huge, because so often this whole thing of beneath me screams self-importance. It screams ego. It screams self-involvement, and serving others flies in the face of that. Think about how what you build and create can build credibility with other people, with networks. It can cause personal growth because you're learning, you're growing, you're adapting, you're getting mindsets challenged, much like this one maybe, and you're putting the work in. And you're doing this in a way that you're helping people, not just helping yourself. Like, don't be the person who's just, even if this is your goal, is like, hey, I want this to make X amount of dollars, or I want to make X amount of dollars a year off of my creativity and my creative business, whatever that looks like. Have those goals, yes. And it's not a bad thing to want to make money. We all need to eat and live indoors, as my friends say. But even beyond that, there's nothing wrong with wanting to earn money and to live handsomely if that's what motivates you. But don't lose serving people in the mix, because it's really about how you take what it is that you do and what it is that you do, and you intersect with somebody else and their needs. And then the magic happens, because whatever you do, you need customers, you need clients, you need people who have problems and your solutions that help solve those problems. So don't forget that. Serve others along the way. There's something about here that we need to reframe small work more as an opportunity to help people in real, tangible ways. I mean, think about this. Even if you're trying to test an idea or you're trying to validate something, maybe one of the worst things that can happen is out of the gate, something blows up and becomes huge because it doesn't give you the room to make tweaks and changes in the shadows. It doesn't give you the ability to work something out before you go grand scale with it. Because if you blow up with something immediately, and maybe you've had this happen, and you haven't worked out the kinks, it can be a devastating thing, because then all of a sudden the reputation is sour. Then all of a sudden it's harder to do something next time because people have a bad taste in their mouth. Oh, I remember when they did this last time and things fell apart, or they didn't fully think through procedures, or they didn't think through materials, or whatever it was that happened, how it fell apart. You want to make sure that you're considering all those things. You're learning, you're growing, you're serving, and having the opportunity to do something small and helping people in tangible ways gives you the ability to work the kinks out. Also to have some case studies to prove to yourself and to others, hey, this actually works. This really does what I intend it to do. And it can be so incredibly valuable for you that when you serve, you create value, not just for others, but for yourself as well. Serve along the way. That's number 3. And lastly, number 4, look, I know we all want to say no, but strategic no's, they come later. You can't say no strategically until you've built up enough experience and credibility. There will come a point, if you say yes enough, where you can't afford to say yes to everything, because every yes means a no to something else. And if you keep saying yes to everything, it will be impossible to focus and to be strategic and say yes to the right opportunities that you've been wanting since the beginning that maybe now are starting to come. But the thing is, it's a progression. And there's a strategy. You strategically say no to certain things because maybe they're not aligned anymore. Maybe you've learned the lessons that you needed to learn in a certain context or with a certain project. And that's okay. But don't say no out of the gate for everything when you don't have anything. Say yes, and then later the strategic no's come. Have patience. I know we don't like that word. Sometimes saying yes leads to a bigger, more strategic opportunity down the line. And then we can choose to say no to smaller things. We have a body of work then. We have a proven strategy. We have credibility. We've done proof of concept. We have things that we can show that are real and true, and not just posturing, and not just self-inflating, and not this skipping the line and trying to present ourselves as somebody or something we're not. But because we've put the work in, the work is our resume. It's the place where people look and see what we've done, how we've done it, the relationships we've built, the testimonials that we have from other people. All those things are so very important as we strive to do our creative work. So I want to leave you with this. Reflect maybe on this in your own life. Where have you seen this beneath me mentality creep in? And where do you maybe need to rein it in and say, you know what? I maybe need to revisit this opportunity or this invitation. Because previously I've been thinking, I don't know, I'm above this, man. This is so beneath me. Maybe there's an opportunity in disguise, and it's just waiting for you to take hold of it. But we got to do the work. Take a project this week or a task that you might feel is small or out of alignment with the ideal expert image, but could lead to growth, and get to work on it. Because there is no shortcut. And if we continually posture ourselves to say that everything is beneath us and everyone is beneath us, we're going to find ourselves locked away in that tower, but it will be a prison. And no one's going to be coming for us to cheerlead us on. No one's going to be coming to us with projects. No one's going to be beating down our doors with opportunities looking like the things that we want them to look like, because we've sidelined ourselves with our mindset, with our attitude. Maybe this was a real gut check for you. And if it was, I hope it was the kind that stings, but that also brings a little bit of relief, because it gives you not only food for thought, but a kick in the pants to go in the right direction, to take some action to guard against this. I know that this is something that I have to keep in check. And like I said, even being new here in Nashville, there are things that I cannot compare to New York, because they're two different places, two different communities, and they'll have completely different opportunities. But one thing's for sure, I want to be the best version of me wherever I am. And I want to be the most authentic version of me wherever I am. I don't want to pretend. I don't want to posture. That's exhausting. It sounds exhausting. I don't want to try to make myself look bigger than I really am. I want to be big in the right way, in the way that serves others, in the way that taps into gifts and abilities and talents and leverages networks and strategic relationships, so that there's something better and bigger than myself that happens in the mix. And I want to challenge you with that too. So spend some time this week maybe thinking about these things. Maybe you need to re-listen to this episode and get this to a deeper level. Wherever it finds you, I want to encourage you, don't posture. Don't try to lean into a reputation that you don't have yet, but do the work. Show up, do the work, and then do it again tomorrow, and then again and again and again. Trust me, you will thank yourself in the long run. As I always leave you on these solo episodes, my charge to you today, go create something. Thanks for listening today. I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and a review. It really helps this podcast be seen and heard by others.